China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
No tours through Tibet!
No tours through Tibet!
China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
Tibet belongs to Tibetans!
Tibet belongs to Tibetans!
숙제진다. One world, one dream!
Free Tibet now!
One world, one dream!
Free Tibet now!
So the Chinese government says that, and the International Olympic Committee say that the Olympic torch represents peace, friendship, brotherhood, unity. They say that these are the values of the Olympics. But for Tibetans, for Uyghur people, for Southern Mongolians, and for millions and millions of Chinese, none of these things are true under the Chinese government. None of these things, none of these values mean anything because they're denied their humanity. They're denied peace of mind. They're denied their freedom. There is no unity in China. It's fake, it's false, and the Chinese government knows it. And so the only way that they can keep everything together is by pointing guns and by pointing tanks at the people and by scaring everybody, putting the fear of death and torture and pain and suffering into them. That's the only way they keep control. And so now the Olympic torch has finished its global journey in the land and the territory that the Chinese government can't control. And we saw what happened. When the Olympic torch traveled around the world, there were protests. There were people in opposition everywhere, not just Tibetans. Everybody, the media and the Chinese government and others have said, look at these Tibetans who are protesting the torch everywhere it goes. Well, there were Tibetans everywhere. But we weren't the only ones. I was in London, I was in San Francisco. I saw people came out by the thousands. Tens of thousands of people around the world who support Tibetans, who support freedom, who support justice. They also took to the streets. They also protested. The Chinese government says they have the truth and Tibetans are lying. But in fact, if you look around the world, the vast majority of people who have full access to media and freedom and information, and especially those thousands who came into the streets, they came to support us. Because they know the Chinese government, they know the Communist Party, the one party that rules China, is just spinning a massive, massive lie, and nobody really believes it, not even them. So when their torch was in the free world, it was a joke, it was a mockery. Never again, probably ever, will the Chinese or will the Olympic Committee allow the torch to be run around the world, because the entire Olympic movement was undermined, not by us, not by protests, but by the Chinese government, by the host country. And in the end, the entire Olympic movement and all that it's supposed to stand for was undermined by the Chinese government. And the blame and the fault of that lies on the shoulders of Beijing, the Chinese leadership, the Chinese government. The blame for the protest and all of the trouble around the torch lies on the shoulders of the International Olympic Committee and nobody else. They've trapped Tibetans in the middle, they've trapped the athletes in the middle, they've trapped all innocent people in the middle, and yet they try and blame us. And now, again, the torch is, they're continuing the journey of harmony, which is an absolute joke. And the torch is going into Tibet. It's already been once in Dechin, in Gyaltang. But now they're going to take it into Lhasa. And I just want to ask, especially for any of our American friends or people here who've been born and raised and lived in freedom their whole lives, to imagine, just imagine, the United States, or wherever your home country may be, is invaded, is taken over, your people are forced out of their homes, your jobs are taken, your grandparents are tortured, your mother, your father put in jail, You're denied education. You're made to forced to speak another language that isn't your language. You're told you can't go to church. You can't pray. You can't be free. You can't even think about freedom or democracy, because if you do, you're going to go to jail and we're going to torture you. Imagine this happens in this country, and then while it's happening, while your people are suffering, while everybody's living in fear and pain, suddenly the Olympic Committee decides it's going to be a good idea to run the Olympic torch through the streets. And they're going to force somebody else's flag in your hand, and you're going to have to stand on the side of the road and cheer. And if you don't want to cheer, you're going to go to jail. Or if you want to say something, just say something against the lie that that's being forced on you. If you want to say anything against the lie that is being forced on you, your family will suffer, your children will suffer. The International Olympic Committee and all of those people in positions of leadership right now within the Olympic movement should be ashamed of themselves. They gave the Chinese government, the Communist Party of China, a one-party dictatorial government, they gave them the Olympic Games and they wanted everything to be perfect. And they have the audacity to scold us for protesting. They have undermined the Olympic movement. They have sold the world short. All of the athletes who now have to go compete in the most polluted city on earth, all of those athletes who now are feeling stressed and feeling tension instead of feeling, at the peak of their careers, all of those people, they have to blame the Olympic Committee and the Chinese government. All Tibetans are doing is all any other human being on earth would do, which is fight for their freedom. All Tibetans are doing is trying to survive. Those of us who protested in free countries around the world over the past 2-3 months, all we're doing is trying to support 6 million people who are living under some of the worst conditions on planet Earth. The journalists called me when the uprisings happened inside Tibet in March. The journalists called from all over the world and they said, we can't get into Tibet. How do we get into Tibet? Why is there no video? Why aren't there more photos? We can't believe, we never knew how bad it was inside Tibet. It's worse than Burma, some of them said to me. It was an education, it was a lesson for them that what we've been saying for all of these years is true. Just because the Chinese government hired some American PR firm to do their public relations and design glossy flyers that say peace doesn't mean it's true. Just because the Chinese government has a lot of money to spend on fancy commercials and on tours and packages that bring people to China and Tibet and never allow them to see the truth, doesn't mean that all is well there.